I'm Ramvi. I write comics. I've written a bunch of independent books. I started off with These Savage Shores, Paradiso at Image. I've gone on to write Blue and Green and Layla Starr and Rare Flavors, and I've had a bunch of Eisner nominations for those books. And I've also done work at DC. I've written Detective Comics at DC. I'm currently writing New Gods and Resurrection Handbook.
Phillip Kinley Johnson. I started at Boom Studios with Last Sons of America and Warlords of Appalachia, other various things. Those got noticed at DC Marvel, and I've since done things like Superman, Action Comics, Batman and Robin, Incredible Hulk, Alien, and various things. Thanks so much for being here.
So I want to start off by talking about how you got started. You know, both of you kind of went about different ways. You started with like Kickstarter comics, self-published comics. I know you worked with your brother because your brother wanted to get. We have a little back. I know a lot of the answers I'm going to ask him, but you started collaborating with your brother and things. If y'all could speak to how you got started and some of the things you learned that maybe if you were starting again that route, what you would change or just go all in again on.
Sure. So I was already. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah. It's been,
no.
Yeah. I think this one. I think they got loud enough. We can.
Yes, for sure.
Sorry.
All right, how's that? Wow, that's a lot hotter. So I was already, had a career as a musician in the Washington D.C. area, and my brother really wanted to be a comic artist, and just didn't know how to get started. Didn't know anything about the industry or how it worked. He liked to draw, and he really wanted to draw comics, and he was just living in Kentucky, where he and I grew up, like darkest Kentucky, like no internet, like it was far from a proper store. And I just was like, man, just come move in with me, man. We'll figure it out. Like so got him out of where he was living, and he came and lived with me in the DC, Maryland area, and found a great store. We started going to conventions like this one, and just kind of educated ourselves. Like literally bought the How to Make Comics for Dummies book. And I just started writing scripts just for him to have a portfolio, because he was drawing a lot of pinups. He would have a picture of Batman looking scowly or Wolverine by himself, like with his claws out, but he wasn't telling stories, So I just figured out what a comic script looked like, and he and I started doing some stories together. And I just really got the bug. It felt, as a musician, it felt very familiar. Just the collaborative nature of it. How any one person changing out from the group changes the whole product. I don't know, I just really fell in love with it. So I started looking for other artists to work with, and there was, one of those got made, and then another one got made. The first one is by far the hardest book to do. Like once you make one comic book, then that makes you like real, and then you can start doing other ones. So yeah, I mean, as far as what I would change, I don't know. Everyone has their own way in. Like there's this cliche story that once you break into comics, like that door that you took is forever closed to everyone else. It does kind of feel like that. Every story how you got in is very unique and unusual. So it's just, I don't know, like the way it still feels kind of like an accident that I broke in at all. I just wanted to make cool stuff with my brother, So. I don't know. I wouldn't change much. Actually, I like how it went.
I'm just going to completely disagree with everything he said now, because I got into comics kind of in a similar way. So that door is very much open. No, I've been writing since I was a kid. It had always been a hobby, always been something I wanted to do, but I studied to be a chemical engineer. I worked as a chemical engineer for a few years, and I had been writing things during my lunch breaks, hotels, airplane trips, whatnot. And I had a few of those things published, so I didn't go in completely not knowing whether anyone was gonna like anything I did or whether I had any measure of talent. So I had a little bit of confidence going in. Then around 2013, I had a big blowout with my dad. I was like, I'm done with this chemical engineering stuff. He was a chemical engineer as well. I was like, I'm gonna go write. And he was like, I'll see you back here in 2 years. But I started writing, and I had a few things published here and there. And one of my cousins, a brother as well, came up and said, hey, you know, you have this real visual style of writing. Have you ever tried writing graphic novels? Now, I had read comics as a kid, and I'd stopped reading them for a while, and I'd read them again when I was in my 20s. And I'd never really given thought to writing for comics, but I said, you know what, I think I've seen a script somewhere. And I went and picked up my copy of Arkham Asylum, and I remember they had Grant Morrison's script in the back of those books. So I said, I'm gonna try writing some comics like this. I wrote a bunch of short stories. I found some artists on Facebook and Instagram and asked them if they wanted to draw them. And that's how my first sort of Kickstarted book came together. You know, looking back at it now, I think it was a good book, and I sent it out to all the publishers, and they were like, these are black and white, there's stories set in Mumbai, we're not sure if anyone wants to read this. And one of the publishers, and that was Chris Staros at Top Shelf at the time, he said, you know what, this is actually good work and you should kickstart it, because you're not gonna find publishers who are willing to take that risk. And so I did. That book did really well, and once that book had done well, it's like Phillip said, you know, once you're in, you're in. You know, 2 years later, I had Boom asking me, hey, do you have any stories that are set in Mumbai, maybe, that are like, you know, because that book had been successful. And so I think the thing to take away from that is just you know, follow your passion and do what you feel passionate about, and the market or publishers or the industry will find a way to settle themselves around you if you're good enough at what you do. And yeah, and as far as changing stuff goes, like I wouldn't change a thing, because I think everything you do, everything you experience kind of makes you the writer that you are.
I'm glad you mentioned experience, because both of you kind of hit on, you had careers before comics, in engineering, as a musician and things. What in that job, in that life, influenced either your work or your process in your writing life?
Yeah, I mean, I got to, and I'm sure the same is true of Phillip to an extent. Like, I got to travel a lot as part of my chemical engineering work. Traveled to a lot of different countries, a lot of different societies and cultures, and I think the thing that I found that really inspired me was that fundamentally, like, everyday human beings are the same no matter where you go. They worry about the same things, they want to accomplish the same things. And I think putting that in your stories lets you write about things that you might not be familiar with, or your readership might not be familiar with, and yet you have this innate ability to find a connection because you realize that humanity is the same no matter where you go. And that really influenced my work and the way I think about writing stories. I think about stuff that you don't know is always a window into something that's more fascinating, rather than something you should be afraid of, if you will. And then I think my science background lets me engineer my stories to an extent. I think of a lot of human interaction, also like physics, you know, particles colliding and impurities and otherwise pure mixtures and whatnot. So I use a lot of my chemical engineering background as a way of thinking about stories.
My background as a musician, and also as a soldier, like just the biggest way, the most prominent way that has impacted my work is just understanding the importance of collaboration. That's a huge part of comics, is just working, the relationships that you have with your creative team. So that's a huge thing. I've always admired the way that Tolkien put little stories and songs and poems into his work, like within the world that he was creating, and that made the whole world kind of feel more real and lived in to me. It made the cultures feel much more real. I always really admired that, and those are always one of my favorite parts of his stories. So I do that in my own work. My music background finds its way into my comics very often. I write a lot of songs in my books, and not always in big, prominent ways. Like in Tolkien, like the scene kind of stops and somebody sings and everyone else listens. It's not always that. there's not always that halt. Sometimes it is very important. Sometimes the story is being told through like, iambic pentameter or a song or whatever. Other times it's just like a song on the radio during a scene. Like I don't know, it just makes the world feel more real to me. So I do write a lot of music for my books.
So do you want to do an Etrigan book where you have to write and rhyme the whole time?
Funny you should say that. Etrigan is, I wrote Etrigan into my Superman run, and actually he's in Batman and Robin now. He's in the next issue of Batman and Robin. It's about to hit. Etrigan is in there. That arc is about it's like a murder mystery. There's this killer in Gotham, and there's an open question about whether or not he might be a demon. And everyone who has ever faced this, seen this demon and gotten away, or this killer and gotten away, says that they speak in rhyme or verse. And there's a scene in issue 22 where Batman and Inspector Lautrec interrogate Jason Blood, and Etrigan is also being interrogated through this mirror, and this is really cool rhyming scene. It's really fun. So anyway.